All right. Howdy, y'all. Yeah, welcome to my live. I'm Johanna Renee, and I like to come on here and show y'all what I'm doing in the realm of drawing and painting. And so today I'm going to be finishing up not finishing up, I'm going to be working on, because I don't think I'll be able to finish it, but I'm going to be working on a charcoal drawing of mine, a charcoal graphite drawing of mine. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And if you are watching this live, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I can't see who's watching technically. It just gives me a number like, oh, one person's watching or 10 people. So if you want me to say hi to you personally or interact, then feel free to say something in the comments. Also, let me know that you can hear me. I have my mic, and that's like usually the last thing I forget to do is to set it up and everything. And so also let me know if my mic drops, because more than likely it ran out of battery. So but yeah, so welcome. And let me just make sure of a couple things here. Couple tech things. It's really windy today, so I don't know how the stream is going to be, one. And I don't know if you can hear, it's like banging doors and things. Like, it's really windy. So you might pick that up on my mic. I'm not banging things around. At least not trying to. But yeah, let's see here. Things. Awesome. Okay, cool. Should be good. I think we'll find out. Okay. And then on top of that, I'm also streaming to Facebook and YouTube. So I don't really know what I'm doing over there, by the way. So if you guys are on Facebook and YouTube and you're trying to like chat with me in the comments and I'm not seeing it, it's probably my bad, because I really don't know what I'm doing over there. I'm just kind of like taking big baby steps of going live over there. So there's that. So, all right. So I'm going to kind of start on the process here. So what I was working on is like these charcoal graphite drawings. I've been working on those lately when I have time. And I kind of said in the post that I've been doing these in my sketchbook for a really, really long time. And I really have, but I just didn't know how to like scale them up, if that makes sense. And I don't know why. It's just kind of one of those art things that happens to you when you're just like, oh, like, I don't know how to do this thing, but really, like, you probably have all the tools to do it. And it just doesn't come to you until it kind of comes to you. So, but I was normally working with charcoal and graphite in a multimedia sketchbook, just kind of surface, if that makes sense. And doing what I do with picking out textures and shapes and everything. And then I saw another artist kind of do this technique where they were using a kneaded eraser and erasing things out, like shapes and highlights. And so I was like, oh, I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to experiment with that. And I'll kind of do that a little bit in my sketchbook already, but not to the extent that they were doing it. And so I'm trying to figure that out, like how she was specifically doing it. By the way, her name was, I believe, Kathleen Speranza. She's really cool. She's a really great artist. But I was like playing around with different papers. And so there was like one paper that I was like, this doesn't really work. I can't erase out. And then there's another paper that was kind of the same thing with erasing out, but also like my charcoal and graphite wouldn't mix properly. And then I came across my other sketchbook, which was Bristol paper, and that seemed to work. I feel like Goldilocks was like, this paper doesn't work and this paper doesn't work, but this one's just right. But so yeah, so I did a Bristol paper sketchbook, and I've been doing like thumbnails and everything in this sketchbook for a really long time. But that was like the study I did. Yeah, you guys can see, right? Yeah. And I have other ones that I was like working on. So like you can even see that I was like trying that like where I was trying the erasing and the graphite thing here to make sure it was working to the way I wanted. And then I was like, okay, let me erase out certain shapes and make like a rose. And then I was like, well, let me make like an entire study, like scene, landscape scene, right? And I actually ended up scaling up this one right here because I really liked it. And so now I'm just, and then I made, oops, yes, I definitely just did that. But, and then I made this one. And so, hi there. Oh, is it Salima? Am I pronouncing that right? Tell me if I am or I'm not. But thanks for joining. Hope all is well. So yeah, so I've been doing it in Bristol paper. And then I was like, I have Bristol paper, like bigger sizes of Bristol paper. So I'm going to scale these drawings up. And so that's kind of how I was like, I can transform what I'm doing in my sketchbook onto a larger surface because I love doing that. Like I love just these meditative like shadow shape picking out. Like let me see if I can zoom in here if you guys can see. Do you see all that like texture that's going on? All of those shadow shapes and highlights and like edges and everything. It's really cool how it comes together, and I was like, it would be really cool to scale this up. So that's what I'm doing. I already, in the previous video, I don't even know what it was called, but I'm sure you guys could go, this is my previous live. I had already recreated that sketch on a larger piece. It was 18 by 18. And okay, good. I'm glad it's right. Awesome. Well, it's great to see you. Thanks for showing up and saying hi, and feel free to ask questions and everything of that. So, but yeah, so I already scaled that up, and now it's to the point where I am picking out these shadow shapes and like making these highlights more pronounced and everything. So you're probably gonna just be watching me do that today. It might be kind of boring for y'all. I don't think it's boring, but I understand if you're not doing it, it might be boring for you. So let me go ahead and just switch my camera here. Where was I? Camera, where's my camera? What's up, Dan? Glad you can join. It's hilarious. We have to have the gorilla emoji still. It's been like a year or something like that, Dan. There was one time though that you popped up. I remember it used to say Dan. I don't know what happened. Something happened in your settings. Um, okay, let me switch cameras. Okay, so that's the bigger drawing. It's sitting flat on my table right now. Let me kind of move things and get over there. It's precarious over here. I feel like I have to do limbo just to set things up. Right? Yeah. Yeah, there's still kind of a shadow. Let me see if I can change all that. And I'm like sitting down today because that's kind of how I get in to all of these textures and everything. Um, it's hard to do when it's up on the easel, but I try and limit myself on sitting down and working on art. But since it's so detailed, it's okay for me right now. But normally I try and limit that because it's not good. It's not good for your back. It's not good for your neck. It's not good for your drawing and painting because everything kind of gets foreshortened. But since I'm kind of just making marks, it should be okay. Okay. Yeah, it's not too bad. And let me see here. I'm moving my camera. Hopefully that will work. Cool. So, yeah. Just getting set up. How's your weekend so far, Dan? And Salima, how's your weekend? Where are you located? Salima? We're over here in Colorado. It's very windy today. It's like 40 to 50-mile-per-hour winds. It's crazy. Okay. Just kind of putting a barrier cream on, which I kind of have to do because I live in Colorado. But even when I'm working with graphite and charcoal, I like to do that. So let me move a couple more things here. Oh, you're in Canada? That's cool. Okay. How are we looking? Oh, you're at work? Boo. Boo. Hopefully your work people can't hear me say that. I'm like, boo. They're like, Dan, what are you doing? Who are you watching? Okay. So, all right. Maybe. Yeah. Let's see here. So I don't know if you guys can see some of these textures very well. So like in here, yeah, I guess you can. I guess you can. Oh, I see. But so there's like these highlighted parts, right? And even some darker areas. And I've already been kind of working on this a little bit. But really it's like picking out certain shadow shapes. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Like it might even look finished as it is now, but I take it even like a step further. So hopefully you guys can kind of see it. In fact, I'm usually used to my setup being that I'm standing, so I'm trying to like bring y'all closer. Yeah. There we go. Hey, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. Groovy. Okay, so yeah. Let me push some things back here. Scooch this over. Here we go. So I like to get a piece of glassine paper. All right. And like lay that down. Kind of, it's been in a roll, so it wants to kind of curl on me. Let's put that there. And I have to move my light. Sorry, guys. It's just like right in my eyes and I can't deal. Hmm. There we go. Okay. There we go. So yeah, I'll lay a piece of glassine paper down because I don't want my hand and my arm to smudge everything. And that's why it's also hard. Even if I had like a, what's that called? Like a long stick to rest my hand on with, like if it was upright on an easel, I just don't like to do it because I can't get in there and do what I want to do very well. So I don't know if you guys can see this in a good way or not, but that's what I'll be doing. So I'm just taking a graphite pencil. It's 6B. It's very soft. It's like my favorite one. It's tiny. So, and I come in here, and so this is kind of already dark, but I come in here and make these kind of shadow shaped marks everywhere, all of it. Like I just pick out things that I see. Sometimes it's like just marks and shapes. Sometimes it's faces. Sometimes it's like animals. Um, and that's what I do. It's very like meditative for me. So I might not talk very much because I get in the zone. But like here, I'm trying to just bring out some of these highlights a little bit more, these edges. Oh, I think it can pick up the knocking of, what is that? Like our attic?
I have no idea.
That
I have
attic
no
thing?
idea what that sounds.
I don't think there's a way to like holster that down.
Yeah, I think it gets blown that way. I have no idea.
Just gets blown away. So, and then uh so here I'm taking a really soft charcoal pencil It's extra soft. It's 6B. And because my graphite, even though it's dark, right? It's like a slate gray, but it's not the darkest dark that I want it to be. So I'm coming in here and darkening some of these areas, especially in these cattail things. And of course, like I'm being abstract, right? Like if you saw in the beginning, like looking at it from further away, it makes a landscape scene, but it's still abstracted in some way, right? Um, and that's just my style. But hey, maybe you guys like that style and you want to try something out. And so I'm showing you how I make stuff. Why not? And by putting down this dark, soft charcoal, it's creating heightened contrast, which means it's moving those contrast areas more forward in within my drawing, because that's what heightened contrast does in our view, like as a viewer when you're viewing artwork or design or whatever it may be, things that are really contrasting in our perception, it moves forward. So you can use that within your artwork or design or whatever it may be to create this concept of depth or a foreground or even a focal point, because our eye is going to notice it. And I'm just kind of softening this charcoal area here. Softening the edges, kind of blending it out. And I think I already mentioned that this is glassine paper, but you want to, if you're going to be doing something like this, if you're going to be drawing in general, I would never do this with my pastel paintings. Okay. But for graphite, it's a little bit different. But if you're going to be doing this with graphite, it has to be glassine paper. I've tried it before with wax paper, with deli paper, like a food wrap, you know what I'm talking about? Like even like another piece of paper, and it will still smear. Glassine paper is what they use to wrap things like ink prints and even soft pastels, because it's like, here, I'll even lift my hand up. You saw how like I was even like resting my hand there and moving it around. It's non-porousy. So like you get a little bit of dust on there, but it's like it's even like wax is going to imprint the graphite more into the wax part, but with glassine paper, this just brushes off. So it's like a super smooth surface that isn't going to like gunk up like wax paper would or regular paper would, and then, you know, like smear some of your drawing on top of it. Oh, that's cool. It says my feed or whatever is pretty good for being the wind, being so windy. So that's good. I'm going to take it. And honestly, like these drawings, even in my sketchbook, because they take a long time. This is going to take me a long time. And like this is what I was going to say is like this is the shortest or the longest amount of time I usually spend on anything, like even my paintings, because or like some of my pastel paintings, because pastels dry really fast. And I don't know, it's like different. I want those paintings to have more of like this flow to it. Oh yeah, Salima, there's total range of pencils. And total range of pencils. I don't know. So I was kind of explaining that earlier, actually. Let's see here. So there's different things for drawing. You can draw in anything, you know, like pretty much ink. But what I'm using here is graphite and charcoal. So there's different densities of graphite and charcoal. And this is kind of how they're lettered and numbered. So so if you have like an H, right? H, what that means is that it's going to be hard in density, really hard. And when you're drawing with it, the hardness is going to um, imprint into the paper because the paper has tooth. So the hardness will kind of imprint into the paper a little bit deeper. Not only that, I find that like when you're working with an H graphite pencil, it's more slick and metallic. Um, and sometimes that means that the graphite is mixed with lead. And sometimes it has to be mixed with lead to get that hardness density. So something like a 9H is going to be really hard in density. And then as you go down in numbers on this scale, then like a 6H is going to be a little less hard. Same with like a 2H. And then an HB is going to be right in the middle. It's like a medium softness. And then as you go up in scale to like a 2B, a 6B, a 9B, like a 9B is going to be one of the softest ones that you have. And those apply very matte like, meaning they don't have. So this is a 6B. It doesn't really have, oh, you can't really see probably. Whew. Okay. It doesn't have, oh, I can't do it or else it's like messes up. It doesn't have too much of a sheen to it. It's more matte. Same with like your 9B, but your 9B is going to be really soft. Personally, I like softer graphite and charcoal pencils. And like graphite's just kind of like a different medium as opposed to charcoal. Charcoal's like, I mean, it's pretty close to being like burnt. So, um, and you'll notice the different charcoal feels like, have you ever like cooked or barbecued with like coal? Well, charcoal, coal. It feels like that. It really does. It feels like you're drawing with coal or like a burnt stick or something. Um, Graphite's going to be smoother. And lead, I don't really like lead too much. Like those are mechanical pencils, which are fine, but I don't like the shininess to it sometimes because I mean, I could probably just keep going, but I don't like the shininess of it too much because most often with drawings, you're going to have to display the artwork behind glass. You can fix your drawing. You can spray a fixative to it. In fact, I recommend it. Like I've been spraying my drawings of these. So then that way when I do this, it's not going to smear. But even though you do that and you fix the drawing to where it's not really going to smear, you still want it to be behind glass, in my opinion, because of moisture, because of like, well, just that. Like, let's say, I don't know, you had a flower vase by one of your drawings and it wasn't behind glass, it was just fixed, and you knocked the flower vase over and the water got on, like, splashed onto your drawing, it's going to ruin it, it's going to warp it. So I would still recommend putting your drawings behind glass. And so in saying that, that's why I don't really like lead drawings or graphite mixed with lead, because it's going to be weirdly shiny behind glass, which already has a sheen to it too. So it kind of deters, I think, from the drawing. So it's pretty fun though. You can use graphite in so many different ways. Um, gosh, there's a lot I can say about it. But yeah, you can use graphite in so many different ways. You can even use it kind of like watercolor and move it around. You can get like powdered graphite in different colors too, or different shades, different values. It's pretty fun. Are you like wanting to draw? Do you usually draw, Salima? Or paint or I also find that like when all I can kind of know that my graphite has been mixed with lead because the charcoal, sometimes it's like trying to put, if I try and put charcoal on top of that graphite, it's like oil and water. It won't, they like won't mix. Um Now you can use that to your advantage. Like maybe that's how you like using that, and it looks cool and it gives you like a different texture. I just don't know how to work with that. Your niece wants you to start. Oh, that's really cool. That's cute. Maybe your niece can get into drawing too. Or maybe she already does. It's pretty fun. I have to admit, I'm not much of a draw. Like I need to be better about drawing. I'm usually a painter, but I know that like my paintings will get better if I learn how to draw a little bit more or draw more often. It was just easier for me to learn painting because it was, you create using tone so much rather than line. Line I find hard. I don't know. It's probably why I draw in this way. My stuff isn't very linear. Things that I have to get super detailed and like do a whole bunch of line in that way, like portraits and stuff, it's really hard for me to do. Oh yeah, go get some pencils. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what y'all have up there in Canada as far as like we have like a Michael's or like a Hobby Lobby, or then you can go to like those fine art stores. We have one of them here called like Gyrie's. But honestly, like most of my drawing stuff I've gotten from like Michael's. It doesn't even have to be super high end, like, gosh, what am I trying to say? Like expert grade material kind of thing. Like this is my favorite pencil. And this is the generic brand at Michael's from like Artist Loft. I mean, I have more expensive pencils, but I just don't like them. You know, like I'm just like I don't know. There's something about this pencil that I'm like I like this one. I like the softness of it. I like how it like sharpens and it's not such a hassle for me. So go get some drawing materials. I wish I could like have music going when I do these so you guys can listen to it too though. Because there's so often I just like don't say anything and I feel like I have to talk like the whole time. But sometimes you can't, like you get too into the drawing part. All right. So yeah, so like that's darkening up there. And you see how like your eye kind of gets it kind of like moves there. I'm gonna get more water. 1 second. 6 is a fun age. That was a fun age. I mean, my nephew's about to be 6. So it's weird how fast they like grow up and have their get their own little personalities, and it's hilarious to me. He's a sweetie. All right. And then like sometimes I'll use my graphite pencil to come in here and even kind of blend the charcoal in too. But I really like this style of drawing. I don't even know if it's considered drawing. Like, it's kind of like painting. I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but I think I like to draw in a painterly way because I really like textures and like movement in that way. Like I see tonal value more than I see line or value created with line. Um, and I really like kind of drawing this way or using graphite in this way. Like you don't have to, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like I really like not approaching a drawing in the way that like, oh, I'm going to paint a scene today. Like I'm going to paint cattails with a lake behind it and a mountain with some clouds. Sometimes it's nice to just make marks first, right? Don't like plan out what you're going to draw, but just to make marks first and then see something within those marks. So zoomed in close here, like you can just pick out shadow shapes that you see that depict a certain subject matter. And so I really like to draw this way in a very like abstract way, even something like not like a scene within my sketchbook, like just make random marks and then take your graphite pencil and come in here and pick out things that you see. And I guess this isn't really a good example because I depicted a scene, right? Like I came and I approached this as a scene, even though it's really abstract. It's you can kind of follow a story here, right? These kind of look like cattails because I intended them to look like cattails in front of what could be perceived as water and what could be perceived as a mountain or trees and clouds, right? Like I approached it that way. I looked at like one of my reference photos and was like, this would make a really good scene to practice this kind of drawing and textural marks on. That's how I approached it rather than, let me see if I can give you an example. Okay, so this is kind of some other studies I did to know that I can make things look like cattails, right? But I didn't approach it as I'm going to make cattails. What I did was I took, here's another thing for drawing if you want. I think this would be really fun for you and your nephew to do. Or your niece, sorry. I have a nephew who's your niece. So like if you take this, like this is willow charcoal. It's usually made by Generals or Winsor Newton. Pretty readily available. So this is willow charcoal. It's in a stick. It's compressed, right? And I broke this into pieces to get smaller pieces like this. And I didn't approach a subject matter. All I did was I went in here and made marks with this right? And then I was like, this kind of looks like cattails or something. And then so I went in here and kind of darkened shadow shapes to make maybe the cattails look more pronounced. But do you see the difference of kind of experimenting with making the marks first before you even have an idea of what you're going to draw? Like subject matter, like, and subject matter meaning almost anything. Like, I'm going to go in here. It could have been like, if my subject matter is landscapes or natural things, but it could be portraits, it could be figures, it can be buildings, you know, it could be something very specific, like your subject matter is trees or it's a bird, that kind of thing. So I didn't go in here thinking, like, what I'm trying to say is, like, I didn't go in here thinking of any kind of subject matter. I was more interested in just making the marks, and the marks tell me what subject matter it is, rather than approaching a painting or a drawing being like, I'm going to dictate the subject matter. So with this one being cattails in a scene, but you see how this looks more forced, I want to say, maybe not forced, but developed, whereas this seems more representational of my subject matter, where this seems a little bit more abstract. And then let's see, I have 1 second. You can get really defined in things like, say, for instance, like this one, this sketch. I didn't see how it's just kind of gobbledygook. And you can see, though, there's like eyes and faces and things like that. I didn't intend for that subject matter to come out. Like, I didn't intend to draw it like this. All I did was I took this graphite and made marks, and then I picked out what I saw. So I happened to see a bunch of eyes and like faces, and I would just keep picking that out. And so that's what I'm doing here within this texture, because that's how I made these marks, was just with the willow charcoal. But I still approached the subject matter. And it doesn't even have to be like subject matter. I think when people think of drawing, they think of, I'm going to make something. I'm going to make a tree. I'm going to make a face. I'm going to make a pomegranate. Like, I'm going to make, no, let's not use that as an example. I'm just trying to go through it. So, but I think that's how most people approach a drawing. And sometimes that's what makes it hard to get to the canvas, is trying to be super representational in your work and going into, it's kind of hard to sometimes come up with ideas, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. So it gets hard to come up with ideas to draw, and so that hinders you from actually drawing, which I think it's kind of a relief to then just make marks and not think about what you're going to draw. Like, oh, I'm going to draw a pomegranate today. You're just making marks, and the marks dictate what you're going to see. And you get to pick out shadow shapes that way, because at the end of the day, like, I think next to line and color, that shapes are the biggest thing we can observe in like our pieces. And it's just a relief. Like, I guess you don't even have to make subject matter. You can just darken shapes, is what I'm saying. Like, I didn't see subject matter in this. I'm just defining edges with value a little bit more. But you can see like almost anything in it. And you can turn it all kinds of ways. Yeah, exactly. It's like surprising yourself. And so I think it's honestly refreshing just to like make shapes and experiment with texture rather than just line. And that's how I think people mainly think of drawing, is like drawing with line. It's pretty fun. So it might be kind of fun with like your niece, be like, I don't know, make these marks. What do you see in it? It's kind of like, what is that psych test? Like a Rorschach test? It's like, what do you see in these textures? What does that mean when you're seeing them? Anyways, I think it's cool, but that's kind of how I started to draw. Like, I don't see anything, but it's flowy. I don't know. And it gets me into the sketchbook. And it gets me kind of contemplating how to draw things because I see things more in tonal value and shape than I do line. And then you can go through, because I kind of do the same thing with even my thumbnails. Okay, like they're thumbnails, right? They're just thumbnails, but I make them with graphite. And I really started liking thumbnails. I don't know, but they're just kind of fun to do. And I'm kind of, dictating the subject matter here, but they're fun to do. And I get to see all those textures, like, and those marks. I'm like, oh, these marks look like trees to me. So I don't know. So then, then you start associating different marks with representing different subject matter. So a lot of my sketchbooks, I guess, are filled with like thumbnails and weird abstract drawing things. But so I was doing that for a long time. And I'm like, I want to scale them up because the textures are really cool. And I think they're so cool. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I finally figured it out to use Bristol paper. And I like, okay, so yeah. So just as much as like, sorry, I got distracted. It's so windy. It's crazy. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I was trying to see if you guys can hear the wind and the knocking. But surface has to play a big deal with your drawing and your paintings, and it's really like not about it's really just about finding the right things that you like, if that makes sense. So like as far as like surfaces go, like people might be like, oh, I don't think you should draw on Bristol paper. But if you like drawing on Bristol paper, like draw on Bristol paper, because that's like what gives you the textures that you want, or that kind of thing. So just I feel like I experiment around with so many different surfaces to draw on. So I think a lot of people think like, oh, um, if I'm going to draw, I just have to draw on paper. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Like you can draw on canvas, you can draw on watercolor paper. It doesn't have to be drawing paper. You can draw on watercolor paper, you can draw on sanded surfaces, you can draw on a gessoed canvas, you can draw on like any kind of pretty much surface medium that you can think of. And so I think it's kind of fun to experiment with different surfaces too, not just paper. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I get sad when my stuff looks different than what I wanted to draw. So that's why I just do it. I think she would enjoy it. Thanks. Oh, that's really nice. That's cool. Makes me feel good. Cool. So yeah, but these kind of get really cool and detailed. When you get up real close to them. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully I just kind of want to see if you guys can see it. Hmm. Sorry, I'm just gonna see if I can zoom in a little bit because you can't get the full aspect of the textures. And I think they're like cool because not only do they look neat from far away, but then when you like, it's one that you want to come up close and like look into. It's kind of trippy. I don't know if you guys can see. Maybe. I don't know. It's just cool. Like seeing how like this gets developed a little bit more than some other areas here. And then like as a whole, it looks like a cool landscape scene. It's pretty cool. I like it. I like it. It's fun. All right, let me bring this back up a little bit more. probably work on it a little bit more. Like some of these textures overlap each other. Just kind of what's going on here in this little area. So there's like a highlight that's like whoosh over to this way, and then there's some other softer highlights going this way, but it's laid on top of certain graphite that I can kind of make that direction of the highlights a little bit more pronounced by picking out those shadow shapes in between. Yeah. Hmm. And like, so there's like these darker shapes, right? Like here and here. But you see how I'm not like filling in a continuous line here to account for like these highlights overlapping, because if I were to overlap it so much, it would just be filled with highlight. But by kind of interconnecting these darker shadow shapes, it's giving kind of the illusion of like grass blades to me. Like you can see these overlapping highlighted grass blades, and then underneath them is like, you know, grass blades that are in shadow. Maybe I'm gonna start like working here and filling in these connecting textures. Hmm. Sorry, I'm like probably humming and singing. All right, just checking out the time. Been kind of doing this a little bit over an hour or so. So I'm probably gonna head off here in a little bit. I'm probably still just gonna keep working on it though. but it's something that doesn't really show up very well because it's super detailed. You can't see it too well. So you can only kind of see it when I'm done enough of it. It is pretty cool. And plus the wind is like picking up. I don't know if you guys can even hear it over me, but all right, y'all. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining Salima and Dan. And I'll probably post some pictures of it here in a little bit if I can get to it. But I appreciate y'all, and I hope you have a good rest.